Hello and welcome to World Talks, where every word matters. I'm your host, Sasha Farbach. Now, in a swift and decisive military operation in September, Azerbaijan launched an offensive in the separatist enclave of Nagorno-Karabakh, putting an end to 3 decades of ethnic Armenian dominance in the region. The outcome has led to a mass exodus, with the vast majority of the area's 120,000 residents fleeing, marking a significant shift in control in an area internationally acknowledged as part of Azerbaijan. So what does all this mean for the Caucasus and the wider world? To analyze it further, I'm now joined by Dr. Vasif Huseynov, the head of the department at the Center of Analysis of International Relations in Baku, Azerbaijan. Welcome to TVP World. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I would like to just, Professor, go from the beginning a bit, back to September. I think some analysts would look at this and wonder why exactly did Azerbaijan act now? I mean, that campaign was rather swift. Was that due to a weaker Moscow? What would precipitated this attack? Let's start there.
First of all, the developments in September followed what happened in 2020, the Second Karabakh War between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Following this war, some parts of the territories in the Karabakh region of Azerbaijan remained under the joint control of Russian peacekeeping mission and local separatist regime. At the same time, after the war, according to the trilateral statement which was signed between Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Russia, Armenia was supposed to withdraw its military forces from Karabakh. And after the war, Second Karabakh War, which happened between 27th of September and 10th of November in 2020, for around 3 years, Azerbaijan tried to resolve this problem peacefully. And in July 2022, the Armenian government, Yerevan, pledged that they will withdraw the armed force Armenia from the territories of Azerbaijan from the Karabakh region. Right. But it didn't happen. Until September this year, it didn't happen. And in parallel, the Azerbaijani armed forces, our state authorities monitored that Armenia actually is or was transferring military supplies to separatist regime in Karabakh, including landmines. Right. During the 30 years of conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia, Armenia has planted around 1 million landmines in the territories of Azerbaijan in the Karabakh region, and they continued to do that after the Second Karabakh War. And that's why simply the negotiations which were mediated by the EU, United States, and Russia, this failed, and it gave no alternative, it left no alternative but to resolve the problems through a military force again.
Okay, all right. So thank you for that opinion there. Now, I just want to also welcome also to the program. We have now another guest, Dr. Vahram Ter Matevosyan, Associate Professor, American University of Armenia. Also welcome to the program. So now two of you discussing this issue. Now, I want to play for you both and our audience just a clip. We're going to be hearing from Armenia's Prime Minister, Mr. Pashinyan, of what he said just a few weeks ago. Let's listen to that now.
We hope that on the basis of principles for mutual border recognition with Azerbaijan, in the coming months we shall sign with Azerbaijan an agreement on peace and establishment of relations. I hope that in the near future we will have developments also for opening of Armenia-Turkey border for citizens of third countries and for holders of diplomatic passports. This too will bring a positive stimulus for the whole region.
All right, so that was 3 weeks ago, gentlemen. That was 3 weeks ago at the Silk Roads Forum. So a lot has happened in that time. Now, very recently, just this weekend, we're hearing also from the Prime Minister of Armenia a very different language. I'm quoting here, saying that the two countries, Azerbaijan and Armenia, are speaking different diplomatic languages, and it's basically threatening this idea of principles for a peace treaty. Now, I want to bring that over to you now, Bahram. How do we interpret the shift? What happened between that statement we heard and that statement just from the weekend?
Well, I think there are a number of factors that we have to take into account when we are talking about peace and the prospects of peace. Nothing major happened between this period, and Armenia's government has been quite persistent, quite consistent in its efforts since 2021, that Armenia is eager to sign a peace treaty with Azerbaijan and to move ahead with the whole process. But the reality on the ground is quite different. And if you listen to also Azerbaijan's government narrative and discourse, they all speak about peace and prosperity. And but in reality, when we consider the facts on the ground, we see that it's not going to happen anytime soon. And, you know, peace without confidence is not going to last long. What I mean is that if you look at the acts on the ground, we are seeing a state policy from Azerbaijan's part on retaliation and revenge, not only against Armenia, but also against Armenians as such. Look at the past effort. There are 5 major categories that can be used to discuss Azerbaijan's policy and efforts since 2020. The first is explicitness and explicitness of its efforts towards Armenia and Armenians. The other one is disproportionality and excessiveness of its policies and acts against Armenia and Armenians. The other one is symbolism against Armenia and Armenians. The other one is longevity of the revengeful acts against Armenia and Armenians. The other one is low sensitivity for material costs against Armenia and Armenians. So if you look at the discourse of Azerbaijan's leadership, these 4 or 5 categories are easily observable in the efforts. So, and from Armenia's part, Armenian government has made a number of mistakes in the negotiation, around the negotiations, but at the same time, their message has been quite consistent to Azerbaijan and to the world. Mm-hmm. Let's sign the peace treaty, let's do the demarcation, delimitation of the borders, and let's move ahead. We all know that it's not going to be an easy road ahead. We all know that there are going to be many obstacles on the road. But let's not interpret the ceasefire statement on November 10th from a different perspective, because what Azerbaijan is saying is referring to Article 9 of the ceasefire treaty of November 10th that my colleague Vasif has also written extensively about the unimpeded access to Nakhichevan from the mainland Azerbaijan. So that part should be not taken out of context and should not be excessively treated in the negotiation process. I think this is where Armenia is feeling insecure. Armenian government is feeling insecure. This is why they need to be sure that Azerbaijan is not taking this Article number 9 out of proportion. And one thing that could be interpreted as an obstacle, and what happened recently during the past 3 weeks, is that Armenia mentioned that it wants to freeze or at least to suspend Article 9 of the ceasefire treaty, because as the old ceasefire treaty of that day, November 10th, it became meaningless, because Armenia has done all whatever it had to do on schedule, but unfortunately Russia didn't do what it was supposed to do, meaning secure the life and being of Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh. As a result, we know what happened. 150,000 people have been in the blue daylight. In front of the whole world, 150,000 people have been displaced from the ancient lands that they have been living for thousands of years. And now, despite all the condemnation that we hear from around the corners, Azerbaijan also claims let them return to their ancestral lands, but we are missing credible security guarantees on the ground for Armenians to return to their place of residence.
Allow me to interrupt you there, because I do want to hear a little bit more also from Vasif. We've heard now a lot about this particular ceasefire, some criticisms that have come up here, but what I'm also wondering here, I'm concerned about, and would like your opinion there, Vasif, is that we have reports that Azerbaijan would not participate in upcoming negotiations, would not talk with Armenia in the planned visit to the United States. So if we're looking at also what was just touched upon, the hundreds of thousands of 120, 150,000 displaced people, very much fearing for their lives, how do we move forward with this? Because I think in many cases, Azerbaijan here has the upper hand. So I guess it also bears a certain responsibility. How do we move this forward? I mean, what is the plan here? Who are the mediating partners? Is this a role more for Europe? Is it a role for the United States? What happens next?
Yeah, first of all, it is very important to point out that Azerbaijan has been the victim of this conflict, not its initiator, not its aggressor. Azerbaijan's territories, as you mentioned in your first intervention, the Karabakh region has been always recognized as part of Azerbaijan, but it remained under illegal occupation for 30 years. And during this 30 years occupation period, no international player, neither the United States, nor the EU, nor Russia, no one pressured Armenia to abide by the international law, by the United Nations Security Council resolutions, and to return these territories peacefully. And eventually, Armenia's refusal to resolve the conflict through negotiated means led to the Second Karabakh War.
But I want to press you because we are on time.
September. Please, you know, you give...
We're unfortunately pressed for time, so I just want to see where we go in the future with this.
You know, I would highly appreciate if you can give me equal amount of time as you give to my colleague from Armenia. And now I want to talk about this present peace process. You know, from the very beginning of post-Second War period, Azerbaijan proposed to halt the negotiations on bilateral level between Armenia and Azerbaijan without the mediation of third parties. And this is quite natural because this conflict has been never only the matter of Armenia and Azerbaijan. It has been always manipulated by great powers for their own interests. And that's the reason why Azerbaijan is saying that let's have these talks, these negotiations bilaterally. And Azerbaijan has not refused to continue negotiations. Quite the contrary. Yesterday, the Foreign Minister of Azerbaijan addressed the Armenian side and proposed to hold the next round of the elections at the border of Armenia and Azerbaijan without the intervention, mediation of third parties. You know, it is quite natural, it is quite reasonable, and it is an attempt, it is an effort to make sure that the conflict, its resolution, will be only in the interest of Armenia and Azerbaijan, not is going to be manipulated by some external actors. And it happened, this proposal by the Azerbaijani side happened in the aftermath of Armenia's response to the peace treaty proposals of the Azerbaijani side. Armenia somehow delayed for unknown reasons to respond to our proposal for around 2 months, but at least eventually yesterday we received the response from the Armenian side, and now we are waiting whether they agree to meet at the border, not in Brussels, in Washington, in Moscow. Let us meet in our region
and find
regional solutions.
Unfortunately, Vasif, I do have to interrupt you there. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. We've tried here to hear two sides of a very complex issue. I'm sure we need more time in future to discuss it, but I really appreciate that time. It's been very interesting to hear both of those sides to a very, very critical issue for your countries. Thank you so much again, Vasif Huseynov and also Vahram Ter Matevosyan. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And thank you for watching, but stay tuned. Much more coming up right here on TVP World. Goodbye.